The internet is truly a beguiling place. Obviously, with the power of being able to say anything and everything that we want right at our fingertips, the internet is not always a positive place. In fact, you could probably make a pretty strong argument on why it might not be the greatest invention. But if you know how to behave on the internet and don't get carried away and try to literally ruin people's lives, for the most part, it's a phenomenal gift that we have been given. I mean, for some people, including myself, it can act as a little hideaway from your typical everyday life. It can be your own little slice of paradise where you can simply indulge in whatever it is that you love the most. It can bring you comfort when you're at your lowest point. It allows you to connect with your friends who live across the world. It's a place where you can express yourself freely. Be who you are for your pride. Whether you choose to do that or not. In my opinion, it's truly a fantastic thing that our society has embraced as a whole. But like most things, there's also an interesting little corner.
I am disgusted.
Yes, cringe culture is dead. Thank God for that. I mean, just look at me and the fact that I bought Sonic plushies just so I could make them kiss as a joke. Or maybe not a joke, but, you know, whatever. I mean, just because cringe culture is dead doesn't mean we shouldn't be able to criticize people for their questionable interests. And I mean actual questionable interests. Not just fighting over which My Little Pony ship is the best. Now, I guess I should just be a bit more direct for the sake of this video specifically. Burn Smithers and their fans. You are some of the questionable ones. For any of you fortunate souls who have no clue what I'm talking about, Burn Smithers is the slash pairing involving Mr. Burns and Smithers from The Simpsons. Now, I guess at face value that doesn't seem that surprising, like, at all. It's the classic villain and loyal servant dynamic that so many people foam at the mouth over. But trust me, as someone who witnessed the Simpsons fandom in the early 2021 type era, the iceberg goes much deeper than that. With 30 plus years worth of content and a based in canon unrequited love, there are some pretty solid straws for people to grasp at, and then in turn take it to the whole next level. And oh god, do they ever do that. Any little thing that happens between them gets morphed into something it never was supposed to be. Like, seriously. Burns could light Smithers on fire, and these fans would say he did it because, quote unquote, it's a metaphor for Burnsy baby being a flaming homosexual too, so he lit his boyfriend on fire to represent that fact. Yeah, sure. That's exactly what the writers were thinking when they did that. You're correct, 100%. Here's your ticket to the mental asylum. Now, given many fans of different pairings in the show are guilty of this, including myself. I mean, Lenny and Carl for the win. The writers nowadays kind of make you lick the plate for any real content. But the difference most of the time is that they're with ships that aren't based on abuse and lifelong conditioning to act in a certain manner. Some pairings just exist to simply be silly. And that's good. That's the kind of pairing I like. They don't exist simply to mischaracterize the two characters constantly, just to fit their fan-made fetishized narrative. Now, this video is probably going to be all over the place. It's my first video in a year, so forgive me. And I'm also recovering from a cold, so I sound a little bit nasally, but who cares at this point? We're literally discussing Burn Smithers of all things. I'm sorry for disappearing, but I'm back. I was having a moment. It's all good now, but I don't really have a clear plan for what I want to say. I just want to rant about it for a little bit. So let's start at square one in the canon timeline and piss off all of the 12-year-olds watching this video who love Burn Smithers. In the Blunder years from season 13, we find out just how exactly the pair met. Around 30 years prior to the canon current timeline of the show, we meet Smithers Sr., Smithers' father, who bravely sacrifices himself during a nuclear meltdown at the power plant in order to protect the entirety of Springfield, but mostly his baby, Waylon Smithers. He hands Smithers to Burns right before dying of radiation poisoning, and thus Waylon Smithers is groomed to be the next quote-unquote Smithers. From that point on, Smithers is the trusted right-hand man of Mr. Burns, and the two are quite an amazing comedic duo. They're probably the most well-known duo on the show, actually. And rightfully so. They worked hard for that bag. They work off of each other perfectly, and whenever an episode comes out with them as the main focus, you're most likely in for a good time. However, the key point is comedic duo, not romantic. There's a huge difference between enjoying them together from a comedic standpoint, or even platonically at times, and literally wanting them to get married and have scary little demon spawn Burns Smithers creatures, and I just can't even imagine that world. Because for starters, Burns literally held Smithers as a freshly free-range farm-grown baby. Now, I don't know about you, but if I met someone when they were practically a fetus still, I don't think I would ever want to romantically entangle myself with them. That's not a situation I would put myself in.
Disgusting!
Not to mention, Burns was already a dinosaur at that point, so Smithers can do so much better. I mean, Mo is right there.
Not bad. Like frisbee golf, I'm glad I tried it once.
A straight white man.
I just find the whole situation really disturbing in a romantic sense, and I don't know. I could never bring myself to truly understand why anyone would take one look at the two of them together and think, ah yes, it is time to draw some delicious Simpsons yaoi. But then it hit me. The Burns Smithers fans don't see the characters as they are in the show. They see the mischaracterized version that their wildest fantasies have cooked up. They somehow view Mr. Burns as some sextastic, dilfy kind of character who's just ooh-woo baby and misunderstood. And then they see Smithers as their small gay bean, whose entire personality is just ordering pinkety-drinkities at Starbucks every day and going, "Yas, sister, slay it, smoochie," every 5 seconds. Which, I mean, newer seasons of the show don't really help that characterization, and I, for one, get pinkety-drinkities and say smoochie 24/7. But that's not the point. At the end of the day, these skewed viewpoints of the characters are far from the true canon versions of themselves. And I wish that these Burns Smithers stans would remember that. Because if they did, they probably wouldn't find as much deliciousness in it. In reality, you're shipping an evil 1,000-year-old man who groomed Smithers to be his, Smithers, codename for borderline dog of an assistant. Obviously, it's not grooming in the sense of intimate relations, but it's still prepping an unknowing person for a future that is not their choosing. But Smithers is his own person and loves Mr. Burns. You're just a hater, okay? And so what? Yeah, I'm a hater, loud and proud. I hate your weird, freaky-ass ship and cannot for the life of me understand how you don't see the uneven power dynamic that's at play here, or just the grossness of it all. Sure, Smithers is an adult, but he also has been conditioned to have his life revolve around Mr. Burns by Mr. Burns himself. It's almost like some weird version of Stockholm Syndrome. He's been latched on to Burns since he was a baby and doesn't know anything else, including how to love another human that isn't Burns. Even when he took the steps to try and move on, like with Julio for example, he just couldn't, because his views on love and life are all skewed to simply revolve around Burnsy and what he wants and what he needs. Whatever he in his heart knows that he wants and deserves is absolutely secondary. And with the Burns cage, Smithers' love for Burns is finally canonically acknowledged by Burns after all this time. Surprisingly, he's really nice about it. Pretty nonchalant about it, considering he's older than quote-unquote mainstream homosexuality itself probably, but
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Despite the nice facade, there's still a big issue at play here. Burns knows that Smithers would do anything for him, because he's absolutely head over heels obsessively in love with Burns. If Burns needs him to kill a man, sure. Does he want Smithers to cut his own leg off? But of course, anything for Monty. Because maybe one of these days he'll look back at Smithers the way he has always wanted. Maybe just once. They'll share a special moment together that he's waited his whole life for. But that never happens. And it will never happen. Burns knows that. Smithers knows that. Most of us know that it will never happen. Even Ralph knows it will never happen. But Burns takes advantage of that never-ending adoration that Smithers holds for him, and has him do his bidding. I don't know. An argument can be made from pretty much any angle regarding this topic, but at the end of the day, I just think it's weird. I guess the big question would be this. Is Burns Smithers a pro ship? I honestly don't know. I'm not super deep into that. There's not really a list of bad versus good ships out there. It's more so just based on your morals. Like, most of us can agree that shipping incestuous, pedophilic, or abusive pairings is bad, right? I would really hope so. And if you disagree with that statement, then please take this little sippy cup and sit in the corner. It's time for you to do some serious self-reflection revolving around your moral standards. Burns Smithers, though, is such a weird one. Because like I said, you can look at it from so many different point of views. It's multifaceted because the show has been around forever, and the pair has gone through so many different phases in its existence. So parts of it are understandable to a very certain extent, but 99.7% of it is just freaky. Especially that person on Tumblr in 2021 who made a nude Mr. Burns doll just because. Yeah, that was fun. So, are you an awful person who should go die in a hole if you ship Burns like Smithers? No. Unless you're shipping little baby Smithers with Prince Philip over here, then I think it's pretty fair to say you're a bad person. I just think you're kind of weird, really. But you could say that about me and my Sonic plushies that watch over me while I sleep at night. So, I don't really know if my opinion matters. I just can't for the life of me understand it, and definitely think there are some problematic intricacies to the pairing that a lot of people just blatantly choose to ignore, but whatever, I guess, you do you. Just please stop shamelessly drawing smut of the two of them. I don't think my eyes can handle one more surprise, here's Mr. Burns' dusty old Willie jump scare on my computer screen ever again. Just please, make it stop.